Today, we are going to talk about ancient Greek structures and monuments, or ancient Greek architecture. So, when we think of ancient Greek architecture, we are generally referring to temple architecture or other public buildings rather than residential. Ancient Greek temples featured proportional design, columns, friezes, and pediments, usually decorated with sculpture and relief. These elements give ancient Greek architecture its distinctive character. Scholars of ancient Greek architecture generally refer to three orders: Doric, Ionic, and Corinthian. The differences among these are primarily in the shapes of the columns and decoration of the frieze. The Doric order features columns with no base and a simple capital, and a frieze characterized by alternating triglyphs and metopes. The Ionic order includes columns with bases, scrolled capitals, and a solid frieze, either sculpted or left plain. However, the Corinthian order features slender columns topped with elaborate capitals shaped like stylized acanthus leaves, ornately sculpted frieze, and decorative moldings.
The ancient Greeks had a unique style of architecture that is still copied today in government buildings and major monuments throughout the world. Greek architecture is known for tall columns, intricate detail, symmetry, harmony, and balance. The Greek built a sort of building. The main example of Greek architecture that survive today are the large temples that they built for their gods. Temples. Greek temples were grand buildings with a fairly simple design. The outside was surrounded by a row of columns. Above the columns was a decorative panel of sculpture called frieze. Above the frieze was a triangle-shaped area with a more sculpture called pediment. Inside the temple was an inner chamber that housed the statue of the god or goddess of the temple. Other buildings. Beside temples, the Greek built numerous other types of public building and structures. They built large theaters that could hold over 10,000 people. The theaters were usually built into side of a hill and were designed with acoustic that allowed even the back rows to hear the actors. They also built covered walkways called stoas, where merchants would sell goods and people held public meetings. Other public buildings include the gymnasium, courthouse, council building, and sports stadium. Interesting facts about architecture of ancient Greece. The Tholus was a small circular temple built by the Greek. Major construction projects were managed by an architect who directed the workers and craftsmen. Many of the Greek temples and sculptures were painted with bright colors. Roofs generally were constructed with a small slope and covered with ceramic terracotta tiles. Most temples were built on a base that included two or three steps. This raised the temple above the surrounding land.
The character of Greek architecture are simplicity and harmony, refinement of details, purity of lines, and perfection of proportions. The characteristic features: temples constructed on high grounds so people can see it from all angles. Prostyle temple, stoa, a Greek architectural word meaning covered walkway. Theaters, bouleuterion, fortifications, altar, colonnade surrounds the temple. Walls were made of stones. Marble structures completed the buildings. Mural paintings on the walls of temples was highly developed, and optical illusion were connected from horizontal lines for it not to appear trapping or saging from the center. A slight convex outline were formed for stylobates, cornices, and architraves from the temple, Parthenon, the same with vertical lines for columns.